And welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about how to use if-then statements using the Witty library. It's a real simple example. Uh, Basically, all I did here was create a couple of variables. We do have a couple of things going on, but it's real simple. I create a variable called var1, and it contains the string value of variable 1. And this is the first time I've actually used a C++ string. I also use the string header file, and that's used to manipulate strings using a buffer. And I'll get to that in a minute. We have a boolean, and it's called is it okay, and we gave it a default value of false. And then here's where it becomes interesting. I've created a variable of string and named it ss. And basically what we're doing with this, I just needed some kind of way to display the actual true and false value, into the onto the browser, or you could do it on the console. And I needed some kind of way to actually display that, so I went in and created a string, and then I imported the bool alpha manipulator. And basically, a manipulator is kind of like a function that you can use to manipulate values in C++. In this case, the bool alpha is used to manipulate the actual bool type and change it from, instead of a 1 and 0, to true and false. So that way you get a better idea of what the actual value means instead of just ones and zeros. And then the next thing I did was create our application instance. Set our title, if-then statements. Create a response object of type wtext, of type witty text, excuse me. And then here's where we have our if statement. And basically, if statements are some kind of logic that you want to perform. If the condition is true, then it executes your statement. If the condition is false, it skips over that statement and continues the execution in your program. So basically we have var1, and we're saying if var1 is equal to this value, this string, then go ahead and execute the code that is being executed right here. If not, if var1 is not equal to variable 1, this string, then they'll just skip over it and move on to the next statement. And in this one it says, and we have the not operator here, and I'll explain that. We're saying if not is okay, and if that condition is met, then it executes this statement. And basically what the not operator does is take the exact opposite. So in our case, is okay has a default value of false. But what the not operator does is does the exact opposite. So now it's saying if this is true, just because we've used this exclamation point, which is the not operator. So now it's saying if this is true, execute this code. And as you can see, if you look at the values, is var1 equal to variable 1? Of course. So it goes ahead and sets the response and sets the text to var1 is selected. And we see we've created a witty string here. And then in this condition it says if is okay, and then the opposite. So instead of it being false, we're saying if this is true, go ahead and output this value. And if you look at the value, all we did was take the value that is set in response.text and then concatenated it with a new string. And we see we have a break tag right here, and you can do HTML tags, and then it outputs the value saying this is, that is selected. And now you see why I did this string tag, or this string tag object, this string object. And let me show you what this does. This string, again, is a buffer that you can use to manipulate strings. Kind of like the cout object, of where when you start outputting values to the cout onto the screen. So if you had like hello world, my name is Raphael, and 2 strings, it would output those strings because the C object is telling it to output it to to the screen, excuse me, basically what we're saying here is take the value in bool alpha and output it into a string, and then take this boolean and output it also. And this manipulates this and changes it from 0 or 1 to true or false. And then all we want to do is take the actual string value and turn the buffer from a buffer into a string. So this is basically the string that gets created from our buffer up here that we created. And let's go ahead and see if we can run it so you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. I think that would be a little bit better idea so you can see what's going on. Let's just give it a second, okay? And then let's run it. Let's see if we can bring it up here. Got a lot of things going on here. Let's see. There we go. And then let's do a refresh. Let's bring that down some. And as you can see, based on our values, let me bring it down again. Based on our values, is var1 equal to variable 1? Of course it is. So we go ahead and display this value onto the browser. And then is okay, is it true? And that's, let me explain it as well. In an if statement, if the Boolean value, just the Boolean value, if it evaluates to true, it automatically displays that value onto the screen. And now remember what I said, because we set the false, if this was just false and did not have the not operator, which takes the exact opposite value, it would skip over this. But because we made it take the opposite value, now it's going to display false is selected. And another thing I want you to see, when you set the value of a witty object, in this case our witty text, let's just say for example you had if var1 is equal to variable 1 and it's true, it'll display this value. But if this was true as well as it is here, if you just display, if you didn't use this line where you concatenated the value that was already set and just display this value would not be shown on the screen. So that's one thing I want you to understand as well. And excuse me for that. That's a little book I had. You know, that has to be understood. If you set that value twice, the first value will be overridden unless you get the value in that variable that you set beforehand. And as you can see, we did that. We just concatenated it again to the same variable and set the text value again. Hope I'm not confusing you when I say that. But basically all we did was we set our condition. It was true. We set our condition again. It was true. And it outputted the values onto the screen, onto the browser. And I hope I didn't, make that any more complicated than it had to be. But that's basically how you use if statements. And you can also do if-then statements in C++. I didn't do that here, but you'll see examples of that as we go along. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.